We've been talking about it for a long time. In fact, we've been focusing in on it since last week and this week. That's all that's dominated the news. Well, the day has finally arrived, and we are going to see later on this evening the official opening of Parliament, the State of the Nation address to be delivered by our President Jacob Zuma. This is his 10th State of the Nation address, and many, of course, saying this could be his final State of the Nation address here as President of South Africa. But that is yet to be seen. We won't preempt anything. We'll just take things one step at a time and see how things are looking for South Africa, because this is the time when the President takes to the podium and he addresses as many sectors of the South African psyche as he possibly can. And there are so many things that South Africans are hoping for. But I'm gathering from what I'm reading on Twitter and from speaking to everybody that addressing jobs is perhaps the biggest of all of those. But that's something that we need to, of course, have a look at with many people. And we've got a panel of guests that we've assembled today as we come to you from District 6 at the Moravian Hill Chapel, changing our destination of broadcasting slightly. We've got our reporter, Abra Barbria, who's positioned at Parliament, who will be crossing to a bit later. She'll be chatting to the Speaker of the House, Baleka Mbete. We're looking forward to that conversation. Well, let me now just reintroduce you again to our panelists, and we introducing somebody else into the panel, which I think we'll focus quite a bit on now, and that is, of course, education. And it's Nonqedu Madu Bedube. I got it. Okay, I was practicing 3 times, so it's so good to have you on the program from Equal Education.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. All right, and then again reintroducing our guests that were with us in the previous hour, Matthews Parks from Kusatu and Hitile Mabunda from Ikamvu Youth. Again, thanks for staying with us. So I asked in the previous hour, our guests, they've spoken about what they would like the President to address this evening. From your side, what would you like to hear?
I think young people, so I'm from Equal Education, right? And we're a membership-based youth organization. And our work is centered around giving young people the agency and voice to talk about the issues in real time. So what we're looking for in terms of the SONA is to make sure the President, first of all, in the last 3 years, the President hasn't spent enough time in his budget or in his speech addressing education at basic level. So you want him to start talking about deliberate means and ways and measures and tools to address the education crisis in the country. They typically speak about wanting a strong, revolutionary, radical drive into economic transformation. You spoke about jobs now. All of those things find their basis in education. So if the majority demographic in the country does not have the space to be able to get adequate and quality education, and now I'm talking in terms of infrastructure for starters. Yeah. So education's biggest campaign, and that what we're well known for, is the fight for norms and standards for school infrastructure. So we're saying that schools in rural South Africa need to find a voice, need to be supported better. Schools even in urban areas like in Cape Town, the disparity between a school in Rondebosch and the school in Khayelitsha is massive, and it's appalling. So we need like a more direct call on that to say, listen, not just putting more money into the system, because maladministration and I think lack of support in general is a problem. So to say, listen, these are the tools and ways that we'd like to look at education, not even restructuring completely, just talking about how do we give these people more agency, and how do we make sure that you learn enough to be able to be better suited for the job market? Yeah. And that's going to, address all sorts of things. Yeah.
It's a big issue. Education is always a big issue, and when you look at the national budget, and when the budget does come out, it always gets the biggest chunk when it comes to the distribution of our funds. But we'll talk about the budget when the time is right. But the reality is, the funds are not being managed right, and it is not being directed in the right way. You still see children in rural schools having to use the bucket system, sit on the floor, not get their stationery delivered on time. They don't have books. It's almost a state of emergency when you look at the problems that education is going through.
That's the word I'm looking for, exactly, for the President to call it an emergency so that people can respond in the very same way. I think also looking at things like trying to centralize education. In a lot of provinces, they've been trying to introduce things like rationalization of schools, where they're saying, listen, if schools are performing poorly, let's put them together and find a different system for them to work. And this is no way to solve anything, because you can't uproot communities that at their core don't have any sort of basis for like a better education system in general. Yeah. So rationalization and and school centralization is probably one of the techniques the government wants to sort of use, but it isn't working very well. And at the same time, there's a lot of load that's been given down to provincial offices as well for education to say, listen, we've given you this amount of money and you have these amount of resources to try and use, but those things are merely geared or used or propelled towards the urban areas.
Yeah.
And that's how even the results for matrics, for example, are worked out. That you'll find that a province, this is a stupid example, has 50 schools, but 20 of them are in the more urban areas. And of course, those people, because they have better resources and infrastructure and support, will get better marks. And then the 30 schools are left in the rutters, and those things aren't really spoken about.
Yeah.
So,
and then you'll never see the change taking place, because if those that are in those rural schools don't get the proper education and the ability to change the course of their lives,
Sure.
it's not going to happen. I mean, I imagine you work predominantly with the youth here in the Cape. That's predominantly where you are?
So we're a national organisation. We're in
national
5 provinces,
Okay.
but I'm based here in the Cape Town.
So I mean, you see this, everything that we're hearing here when it comes to equal education. I mean, this is the lived experience.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, the government seems to be saying we've given you non-fee schools, but it's not saying we're giving non-fee schools quality education. We're not giving those learners a quality education. So you find black middle class have to remove their kids from schools and townships to go put them somewhere else, but then people who can afford more can take their kids to even better schools, and it's not working. What's happening is that schools in like your Claremonts are still not getting enough bachelor passes, so not enough people are getting into university even from those schools because the basis of the education is faulty.
Yeah. Just a final closing note on Kusatu's side. Sure. And the reality is the money, because when you look at what what we're talking about, that disparity between going to this beautiful private school or a rural school that is under-resourced, but the money that the workers are earning, you can never afford this private education. And that's what I imagine the fight and the battle is all about. It's that equal pay. It's the equal rights for people in a country.
Sure. Look, we're hoping the minimum wage will help address that. It hopefully will boost up the lowest half of the economy's wages. But our next campaign also will be around a social wage. As you're saying, people can't afford decent education. They can't afford transport, healthcare, and so on. So hoping government will also the President will unveil meaningful steps around national health insurance, around social security, and so on.
All right. Let's leave it there for now, and we'll pick up this conversation once again a little bit later on if we can. But I think touching on those issues of education, it's a big issue. It really is a big issue, and many hopefully trying to sort of get to the bottom of it and hoping that the president does address that. Let me just correct myself quickly. I mentioned that this could be the last State of the Nation of our president. As it stands now, it's not his last. His last would be next year, because that's, of course, when we see the elections and the general elections coming in. And then we'll understand. That'll be in 2019. But of course, as it stands now, this is his 10th State of the Nation address that'll be delivered this evening. And we wait with anticipation to hear what the president has to say. Thank you very, very much to our panelists. And again, we'll be back with you a little bit later on. And just to set the scene, we'll be going to the Northern Cape, crossing to a couple of other regions as well around the country. Because remember, as much as it's all coming from Cape Town, the news that you hear is going to affect the whole of South Africa. So expectations are very, very big around the country, and we'll be crossing to our reporters that are stationed everywhere to find out what they're hoping for. All right, right now, however, let us get you a